sun on the field, the feeling I feel when I'm living my life for what's real. Make America healthy, feeling like it's time for a change. We're going back to common sense, making America healthy again. We're going back to common sense, making America healthy again. We're going back up healthy again.
Bro, Kyle stretching in the new intro gets me every freaking time, bro.
I mean, I love midget Bobby lifting weights. Like, that's pretty.
Is that who that is? I've been wondering who that is ever since the first time, dude.
Oh my God, it's so good. Welcome, everybody. Episode 11 of the Club Maha podcast. We got the crew, Kyle Kemper, Ian Carroll, and I am Dustin Stockton. And you know what? We just decided the news is too juicy this week to avoid. So we're going to go Ultimate Tinfoil Show! JFK! Market collapse! Giza pyramids, Antarctica, and more. We also will be joined by the incredible Tiffany Chianci, Vino Mom, to talk about some crazy economic manipulation that is definitely not Maha. We also want to shout out all of you guys watching on YouTube, Rumble, all the other cool places we're streaming, and all of the new people at the Patreon hooking it up. We appreciate and love you guys so much. Thank you. And this will be our first sponsor-free podcast, baby. Let's go. We decided, like kind of as the crew, we had some internal discussions that this brand, Make America Healthy Again, is so important that we got to keep it pristine, right? Like we got to find a way, because you know what? The message of keeping people healthy is bigger than right? Literally, it's bigger than making a couple bucks here and there by getting people to sponsor and do other stuff. So we're going to keep it clean this round, but make sure you go check out the Patreon. Make sure you're following Club Maha on the X account and the YouTube and the Rumble and everywhere that we're at. Shout out to you guys. Man, what a week. We got the JFK files released. Market collapse. That's going to be Tiffany, probably somewhere around hour 2. The Giza pyramids. I'm super deep on this, and I am ready to dude, my tinfoil is thick on this one. And if you haven't seen what's happening in Antarctica, buckle up, buttercup, because it is getting wild. Let's freaking go. Ian, I don't believe you broke the internet today. It's the first time in weeks that we haven't been like, look, Ian has broken the internet.
I slid in a subtle jab and broke the Daily Wire yesterday. And then JFK just came in and wiped it all clear, and now we're back to normal.
Dude, JFK is the news clearing event of all time. Dude, the Daily Wire thing is actually pretty nuts, though.
It's pretty nuts, dude. It's been going on for a long time, too. I kind of wished I had broken the story last week, but I was still trying to gather more stuff and thought I had more time. And then they just pulled the plug on Jeremy. Props to them. So smart move on their part. And I figured, all right, then let's just drop all the truth right now.
So you're telling me that the guy who called himself God King in correspondence and in company policy,
wasn't exactly clear of mind.
Money on propping himself up in things that were kind of terrible?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Whoa.
Who could have
Shocker. Newsflash.
Wow.
Where do we want to start tonight? Because there's a lot. I mean, I
Dude,
feel
it's crazy out here. Maybe we should get the JFK files out of the way because they're basic and they're obvious.
So Kyle, first tell people what you're doing. Where are you at? I believe you are traveling.
Yeah, so I've been driving all across America on another epic voyage. And right now I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, staying with a really good friend named Lynn Redwood, who is the founder of Children's Health Defense.
Let's go, dude.
Talking deeply about Bobby, Maha, one of the things that's like, a lot of the people within the health freedom movement feel like they've been pushed out a little bit. Like, there's a lot of food talk, and like the vaccines necessarily aren't as important. I know that's something like Dr. Jack Kruse talked, like, took real issue with, like, how he means around. And I think there's honestly, like, Bobby needs his army of health freedom, like, these Maha moms, and like, we got to stand up. We got to protect our children. And, Lynn, for example, has been fighting, for the last, probably close to 30 years against like the poisoning of America's youth and children and pregnant mothers and at the hands of the pharmaceutical medical industrial complex. And we got to know, like, Bobby, we've got his back. And Maha includes health freedom and making sure we're not putting a bunch of fake vaccines into everybody's bodies.
Well, so this leads into, and we had the amazing producer Cheney and Damo and the crew behind the scenes who do incredible work, put an actual like structure run of show together. And we started with the first thing is movement, update, calls to action. We've got a big problem, which is, is everybody frozen?
Nah.
Okay, good. You're there.
You're good.
We're chilling.
All right. So the first thing that I've got concerns about, right, is obviously we lost at CDC. Dr. Dave Weldon, right? They had to pull his nomination because Susan
before
Collins,
the hearing too. They didn't even let him hit the stand, which is super
well,
because
two members on the health committee on the Republican side, Bill Cassidy of Louisiana and Susan Collins of Maine, made it clear to the White House that they were not going to vote to advance him because of his anti-vax stances. So, this is
strikes again.
This is why we've been asking everybody to please contact your senators about supporting Dr. Jay Bhattacharya at NIH, to please contact your senator to support Mark Macri at FDA, because who are we going to get at CDC now, right? And unfortunately, it only takes these two Republicans, Bill Cassidy and Susan Collins right now, to prevent somebody moving a recommendation out of the health committee to the broader Senate chamber. It's a big problem. And we should take that as a challenge to make sure that the Maha people who are being appointed are getting through. And without us putting immense amounts of pressure, we're going to continue to be stifled by people who are doing the bidding of big pharma and big agriculture. And it's really troubling to me. Like, I'm incredibly frustrated with the Senate. I think our Congress is almost completely and totally worthless. But to be honest, these are bigger battles than even getting Bobby, because if Bobby does not have the people at each agency to implement his agenda, he's not going to be able to get it done.
Yep. And it makes sense that he's having to kind of play softball for now until he gets his people in. Totally understandable. He only gets one shot at this, and we all have to work together, have his back, do our best.
And that's why it's important as well as a movement that, outside of Congress and the Senate, that, we are able to hold unified messages as well and keep the infighting and the backstabbery to a minimum, because like that's going to be the natural strategy of anyone who wants to derail the movement, is to try and get the movement fighting itself.
Yeah, and the temptation to be like, oh, okay, well, like, I want to fight pharma, and so like, you guys who are pushing this stupid food stuff are out of bounds. Like that's the kind of stuff, right? Like, where we have to put tactic, like, all right, like, you're passionate about your piece of what we're doing, right? Like, let people do it. It's not a zero-sum game, which is, there's room in this movement of health. It's what's so attractive about it. It's a broad enough umbrella that we can do health, we can do wealth, We can do medicine, right? Everything that falls into being healthier. So like let's not screw the pooch. Now we're gonna do some rapid fire like breakdown of what happened in the week. All right. So first, like we're gonna save JFK files because it's super incredible. And you definitely don't want to miss like how much is revealed when we go through that in the later segment. I'm teasing Ian. You guys will find out later. But all right, Trump coming out with a truth that he has voided the pardons of anybody that was auto pen. I don't know if that stands up legally. Like we've got judges acting crazy.
To find out.
I mean, I will say, I think Attorney General Andrew Bailey in Missouri has been probably the best Attorney General in the country. Maybe Ken Paxton is close to Texas, but the work he did in Missouri v. Biden to combat censorship and big tech, next level. And it actually originated with him filing a lawsuit specifically about use of the auto pen and whether or not Joe Biden was making those decisions. I mean, I want to see Fauci in jail. We got news today that India has raided oh man, dude, Trump is so good at trolling.
Yep.
And that is an auto pen in the middle there.
Yep. And even if it's not going to legally stand up, like morally and like Americanly, it should stand up because we all know that Biden wasn't running that White House. It's been clear on multiple occasions that he didn't know what he was signing, and he had signed bills. There was a clip going around of a news anchor that was talking about when he was interviewing Biden, I think kind of off camera talking to him. No, it was a senator rather speaking to him. It was Mike Johnson talking about speaking to Biden about something that he had signed, and Biden clearly did not understand what he had apparently signed. And then he changed his tune after the conversation because clearly Biden was either being lied to about what the auto pen had been used to sign, or he had never even known that he had signed it in the first place. And that is just, it's emblematic of the miscarriage of the power of the executive branch that this auto penning represents in the case of Joe Biden specifically.
Well, I think Joe Biden just in general represented a lot of the obliteration and pornographication of the executive branch.
Yes,
I'm not sure if he was really aware of anything, but again, as people around him would say, it wasn't him, it was his team and his whole administration. It's the ethos, the large, big D Democrats.
It's pretty wild. I will say, right?
He won't do a press conference explaining what each of these meant.
Oh, because they can't roll him out. He's already in like full Jimmy Carter vegetable status. What do you want?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
have we seen anything of Biden since he left? Because I haven't.
No,
just gone.
I mean, it's the ultimate tinfoil.
Put all those skin masks in the garbage disposal, shred them up real small so no one will ever know. And
they're back in Hollywood playing other parts. It's happening. But I mean, if the pardons don't stand, does anything that Biden signed with the auto pen stand?
I mean,
I think it's a reasonable question to ask.
And that's not to mention that Laura Loomer exposed Hunter Biden's Secret Service detail, and Trump pulled it that day. That was a pretty cool development.
Dude, all right. So
Loomer's been on a tear lately. No way around it.
No, listen, I love me some Laura Loomer. Imagine though, right? My understanding of watching the story breakdown. You're Hunter Biden, and you're in the middle of this lawsuit with my boy Garrett Ziegler and Marco Polo, right? Like, I got to get out of here. It's too stressful, right? So you take off to South Africa, and Laura Loomer just happens to be vacationing at the resort you go to.
Is that what happened?
I believe that, right? I know that Laura was there.
Because I didn't know how she initially got the shot.
It was the Ellen DeGeneres post, which was highlighting, but I don't know.
I'm almost positive Laura was there in
That's
South
unreal, dude.
if that is just if that's what happened, and I might just be overreading into it, but
regardless of how it happened, dude,
the karma.
No one is safe.
Get Laura on here real quick, see what she has to say.
Bro, the karma involved a big wait, was that Laura Loomer? Please tell me no. And then waking up and your Secret Service detail is gone, and you're like, what happened? What happened? Yep. Amazing, dude. Laura is in and absolutely crushing the game. She also revealed who the journalist was who hit President Trump in the face with a boom mic, which is also just like unbelievable. And she pointed out, she's like, I can't believe no one else like pointed out who actually was the one who hit the president in the face with a boom mic. Like, how are they covering up for her in the White House
like
press?
a room full of people.
Wild.
Yeah.
All right, what else we got? So we've got Bobby.
Well, and just on the mic thing too. I mean, there was like this. I feel like there's an emerging kind of trend too, because Zelensky was doing an interview with the European Union heads, and oh my God, it was like the Sesame Street situation with all the boom mics all around. It was like a whole caricature play of mics in front of the main characters. Anyways, well, we can pull that up. That'd be great. But it was just completely savage because it just shows these mics. Anyways,
Just trying to make the little man feel important for one last time.
fucking mics.
I think it's coming to an end.
Yeah,
I really feel like we are on the verge. Dude, how you can hit my president in the freaking face? Like, it turns out it's an NPR reporter. Like, drop the people's.
That look right there should become a T-shirt.
Oh
Yeah.
man, I can't take it. All right, let's see. What else do we got? We got Bobby, New York Times COVID article. I don't read the New York Times, so I'm not even aware of what this one is.
Yeah, I don't subscribe to the New York Times. They can get bent.
All right, swing and a miss on our pre-show prep on that one. This is a good one though. Bobby cleaning up baby formula. Ian, this one's got to be
big time, dude. Holy moly, baby formula is so freaking toxic, and I've done way too many videos about how every freaking baby formula in most big grocery stores, every single baby formula is owned by big mega corporations, and every single one of them usually are these companies that are going through lawsuits for having insane amounts of toxic heavy metals. Like, not an exaggeration, up to 400 times the allowable limit of certain heavy metals. I forget which ones, but like it's ones like cadmium, arsenic, lead. Like, it's out of control, poisoning our babies. And in most big grocery stores, you don't have any other option. And in formula specifically, it's actually, there's some sort of legality situation that I don't understand that makes it almost illegal to get it from other countries. And so mothers and parents in America are basically forced to poison their babies. It's unconscionable. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, so we were ordering formula from Europe, like from Switzerland, that
Right?
was like high grade, that didn't have all the shit in it, because literally all the stuff that you get here is garbage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
you
first
gotta have
ingredients
black
are
market.
seed oils and corn syrup, and some of these baby foods and baby formulas have like as much sugar as multiple cans of Coca-Cola. It is outright poison, and it is a travesty.
Well, you would think that baby food and formula would be like the strictest, right? Like, right? Listen,
You would think so, but when you
I'm-
read the reporting that's been done on it, it is actually so. Like, there's a congressional report that was done on it that was published by Congress that has since been scrubbed from the official congressional websites, and you have to find it on archive.org. And in that report, it makes it clear that these companies are testing their own shit and finding out that they're selling it with like 100x of this certain heavy metal, give or take. And then they're just deciding to keep selling it because it's like, in some ways, they are self-regulating. Whether that's actually how the law is supposed to function or not, that's how the actual industry has been functioning for the last, I don't even know how long, like probably decades. It's unconscionable.
Is you telling me that Congress did a study and then it like got disappeared?
And then it got when I went looking for it, I looked for it on the government website where it was originally posted, and the page was gone. And so then I went and searched it out on archive.org and found that congressional report, official congressional report. Yeah.
Dude, that is unbelievably
We're
terrible.
talking companies like Gerber's, companies like Yummy, companies like all the companies, even the ones that like you look and you think, oh, Gerber's is bad, but I'll use this other one that looks good. No, most of them are absolute trash. And I do have, actually it's down right now, but I have the spreadsheet of baby formulas and baby foods that has some of the brands that are good. And there are good ones, but they're very expensive.
Well,
Yeah.
where can parents find like the that spreadsheet, Ian?
I believe that spreadsheet is still up for now on my old website, cancelthisclothingcompany.com. I still have the resources tab available. And in that resources tab, there is a link to spreadsheets that contain a list of these different companies that are selling baby food and whether they're owned by mega corporations, and links to this lawsuit that I'm talking, or not lawsuit, but links to this study that I'm talking about. And it also has brands like Cerebelly, for example, that are higher quality, that are not toxic, that are female or founder owned. And that, like, for example, Cerebelly is founded by a mom of multiple kids that is a neurosurgeon, and is a total rock star, but it also costs a lot more. There's really no good solution in America right now, and that's so sad.
So the number one solution for moms is like, don't be lazy and breastfeed and take care of the food and the inputs that come into you, because breast milk is the absolute best thing that you can give your child. And then as they progress, like my daughter's now 11-month old, and now we just feed her what we're eating, and you make sure that what you're eating is high grade. And we have this little device. It's a little cup that goes on. It's got a little wheel, so you put the food in, and then it just kind of smashes it. So before they have teeth, like at 5, 6, 7 months, or maybe a little bit later than that, but you can start feeding. You just choose the food that you're eating. Make sure you're consuming high grade food, and feed that to your baby. You don't need. There isn't a special class of food called baby food. It's just food. And make sure they get good, healthy food. Make sure there's fat in it. Make sure there's
Healthy
meat.
fat.
Exactly.
So
Healthy protein.
since it's ultimate tinfoil, like I'm gonna throw some tinfoil on, right? This is how you start humans with the ridiculous addictions to sugars and toxic things that require like all of the other stuff for you to go to the hospital, and then pharma to like cure all your problems with a bunch of things that just cause more problems.
And there is precedent for that too. Like it's actually economically, like, they're incentivized to do it. You might even say that they are obligated to do it, because if you're a baby food company, you maximize shareholder value. If you're a corporation that sells baby food, you're required to maximize shareholder value, and you do that by selecting cheap, low quality ingredients that maximize profit. You're legally required to do that. But then the same people that are your shareholders are also the shareholders of the medical companies, the pharma companies, all these other different companies. And not only does it get them addicted to sugar, it also puts them in, like, a lot of these babies are now acquiring, shall we say, lifelong conditions, chronic conditions that can't be cured, allergies, like, not just addictions to bad food, but also immediate results that are chronic conditions that require lifelong medical care, things that also just lead to the types of personality outcomes and brain outcomes that make you more susceptible to advertising, more susceptible to comfort-based products, more susceptible to just all these different profit vectors that all the same top shareholders, the banks, are the owners of all those different corporations that profit off of this pipeline from infant to Wally, pretty much directly.
Well, I feel like the shirt's particularly on point. Food, not pharma.
Yes, sir.
Right, and the trick though is that how much pharma and food are interconnected. And if there's one place that the conspiracy, like the idea that we have these toxic levels of heavy metals in the baby formulas, right? Like that are overwhelmingly pushed on moms, like the whole myth that is created in the hospital with my kids about how hard it is to breastfeed, right? Like it's that I don't know. I feel like everything is pushed to try to drive parents taking like the easier path with these like toxic things that you put in your kid, and that leads to, right, like a lifetime of just nonsense and poisoning in the worst possible ways. And it's actually a perfect lead in and segue to like the next like quick hit topic we have, which is Bobby Kennedy pushing Maha moms. And as somebody who came up in the Tea Party movement with my girl Sarah Palin and the Grizzly moms, I can tell you this: there is no powerful force on earth than mothers, right? Like mothers who are looking to protect their children is like it is a universal magic white power that is like bigger than anything. And so I do have to say, like, I was pretty hard on Bobby into the last like couple weeks. I like a couple of the statements or the Fox News article that like he got played on, but it feels like he's hitting his stride, especially in face of the Dave Weldon being pulled at CDC. But right, like leaning into the Maha moms and engaging them to help be the political force necessary, I think is going to be just hugely necessary to get it done. We had the first Maha commission meeting. I want to know why Kyle Kemper wasn't there. What's going on with that, Kyle?
I was Mahaing with my family, and now. But I want to know more about that, and we should definitely be there. I don't know why Ian Carroll wasn't on the declassification committee either, but you know, we're doing our work.
Yeah, I was running around in the woods, going out to ranches, sitting in mineral
Speaking
ponds in the sun. I was Maha myself real hard last week, detoxing the Joe Rogan Experience and all the flame wars, and just chilling out off the internet for most of last week.
Yeah, I feel like I just did a month with the kids. We were gone for 30 days and we had 26 days on the mountain teaching the kids from the bunny slopes to the black diamonds. By the end of it, it's like, man, these kids are ripping and shredding, and it was so good to just unplug and, you know, be there in the mountains. But, you know, I don't know, just really, really grateful to have been able to do that. But I'm also like really stoked to, you know, be closing that chapter. We're on our way home right now. We're in Atlanta. We'll be back in Florida tomorrow, and then it's time to get it and grind it. And then, you know, hopefully Ian will be in each other's presence.
It'll be a party
for the Confluence event. Confluence.com. If anybody's interested, if you heard that and you feel drawn, go check it out. It's going to be outside of San Antonio, Texas, at our friend Ryland and his sister Molly's regenerative farm called Sovereignty Ranch. And it is going to be an epic gathering over 4 or 5 days, I think.
Yeah,
bring people to really dive in, hang out, drop in, explore, learn from one another, but also strategize about, you know, our next moves. And more than also strategy, also I would say there'll be action as well too.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of tinfoil, Dr. Diane Powell, who is made famous by the telepathy tapes, is going to be there. And oh boy, do I have some stuff to ask her and talk to her about. I am so deep in the telepathy tapes rabbit hole, and I'm about to be dropping some tinfoil on the YouTube about it. We can't even go into it tonight because we would go way too far, way too fast. But it's going to be awesome, and I cannot wait to talk to her about the whole situation.
Well, so Confluence sounds amazing. And I saw my boy Alex Eck, who I met at like a similar type like retreat for content creators. Right? It's those kind of things are always such a good way to just connect and learn and strategize. I think it's really important. All right, we got one last one. West Virginia passing a dye ban bill. This speaks to the work that we can do locally that is so important, man. Like really, there's so much that we can do on a local level to be able to impact, right? Like we should not wait for the federal government. We've seen all of the trouble already getting our guy in at CDC. We don't know who's coming next. We're going to be keeping a close eye on that. And we need Jay Bhattacharya at NIH, and we need Mark Macri at FDA. So please, please, please call your senators. If you've already called, call again and just ask them to please confirm Jay Bhattacharya at NIH and Mark Macri at FDA. All right. So with that, we'd normally go to a sponsor.
Should we drop in on I think Cheney's got the Maha Moms video that Bobby made. Why don't we clip to that and we can quickly discuss, because honestly, like the power of the moms is something. Oh gosh.
Yeah. Make moms great again, for sure.
Make mama.
Hi, I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I'm the Secretary for the Department of Health and Human Services. In the final months of the election, President Trump repeatedly called for removing toxins from our food supply. He added his voice to the millions of Maha moms who were touting the Make America Healthy Again agenda. The first step is radical transparency because right now, not even the US government knows what's in our food. In 1958, the government created a designation called Generally Recognized as Safe, or GRAS, so that we can make common ingredients like salt and baking soda exempt from testing. But today, it isn't just salt and baking soda. Food companies and cooperative regulators have enlarged the GRAS exemption so that these companies can decide for themselves whether a substance is generally recognized as safe. No FDA approval is needed. European nations, on the other hand, require that a chemical be proven safe before it becomes a food ingredient. In our country, the GRAS standard means that every chemical is presumed safe until proven dangerous, and that proof might not happen until millions of Americans are sick with chronic disease. This mass experiment on the American population with GRAS has, in short, been a catastrophe. We now have around 10,000 chemicals in our food.
Let's
Europe,
go, Bobby.
400. For example, titanium dioxide, potentially linked to DNA damage and cancer, is banned in the EU, but it's in our children's food. Potassium bromate, a suspected carcinogen, banned in Europe and Japan. And you guessed it, it's in our children's bread. Food dyes such as red dye 40 and yellow 5 and 6 come with warning labels in Europe. They're linked to behavioral issues in children, but in the US, they're generally recognized as safe. I can't really blame the food companies. They're just doing what we've allowed them to get away with in a system that's taken on a life of its own. We all agree now that it's time to change the system, and that's exactly what we're going to do. I am today directing the FDA commissioner to start the process of changing the rules to eliminate the self-affirming GRAS pathway for new ingredients. I'm also directing the FDA and NIH to ramp up post-market assessments of GRAS chemicals currently in our food so that we can rapidly identify the compounds that are making Americans so sick, and so that American consumers and regulators can make informed decisions. This issue isn't going away. Moms aren't going to return to wanting chemicals in our food that are banned in other developed countries. Even industry knows that we have to change. So I promise you, I'm going to work with all parties, the companies, the moms, the scientists, the consumer advocates, to make American food the healthiest in the world the way that it was when I was a child.
That's the Bobby we know.
Produced by
That's
the
our
Health
boy.
and Human Services.
Gosh, that's the kind of Bobby I want to see.
Dude, so powerful. And to keep in mind that he put that video out after summoning the heads of Kellogg and General Mills and the rest of the big food companies, right? And it speaks to like just being able to right out of the gate be like, boom, right? I'm not waiting for Congress and all the like ridiculousness. Like we're going to remove the GRAS generally, what was it? Generally recognized as safe.
Grass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Too many Americans are exposed to grass.
Yeah.
And
Grass is a dangerous system.
It's brought on. Imagine that you, as an industry,
Grass
you
fed.
decide that you just generally, this is safe. No worries.
No need to study or look at it. And again, I think the juxtaposition between other countries, right? Why is America the fattest and lazy, right? Like why do we have these chronic health issues? Obesity, heart disease, fatty liver disease. Yeah, I wonder what's different between us and everywhere else. Oh, well, we just let people say it's cool. Like, it's cool. Like, we good. And I think we'll get to this when we talk to Tiffany too, right? Which is, we have such a problem because there's no checks when our regulators are captured by the industries that they're supposed to regulate. What happens is like the monopolization of bad stuff. In fact, like Ian was explaining earlier, their fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to maximize profits means that they are forced to legally go after the worst and cheapest like stuff to like fill their product with. It's
Yeah.
crazy, man. All right.
Yeah.
Should we give people the JFK stuff? Because I gotta tell you guys, Ian Carroll has broke, like, he solved it. Like,
I've
all the
solved
way,
it.
the
Yeah.
whole thing.
I've been waiting till right now to drop the solve, to solve the war in the Middle East, to solve the mystery of the pyramids. Yeah, what you got, Dustin? I didn't get anything from it.
No, so I'll say this. It was a plot twist to me. So first, I want to give credit where credit's due, because I've been really hard on everybody for not getting disclosure. I actually have been happily surprised at how much stuff that was redacted is now unredacted in the release. So,
Not gonna lie, I wasn't expecting anything at all. I was not expecting a release. I wasn't expecting unredacted sections. I certainly wasn't expecting some of the tidbits that are now exposed to be in there. It could have been better organized. It could have been more accessible. Could have been a little more digested, but I would rather have it in raw form than in curtailed form or controlled form. So I mean, big props for this release.
But I think our general take on it, and when we were doing the show prep, our general take is be careful what you're saying right now. There's a lot of people, for whatever reason, maybe it's an information op or maybe it's just clout chasing, who are publishing things that aren't like sourced at all to the new stuff and are sometimes old stuff or rehashes of old stuff.
Yeah,
and
if you don't see a direct link to the actual page from the actual documents that were just released, a link that'll take you to the government site, you should take that with a huge mountain of salt, because maybe it is from this release, but I've got a document that only has half of them, and it's 62,800 pages open in this other window right here. 90% of the people that are posting shit have not gone through these pages. They're just reposting what other people have posted. And one of the best examples is the Israel narrative. One of the best examples is the screenshots that are going around they are interesting and they are important. And they're all these screenshots that basically show a pieces of paper that are in there that say on the side somewhere on the top, they say CIA is okay with releasing all of this except for the information in brackets. And then in brackets, it says in various places on the page, Israeli intelligence service. And it's super easy to jump to the conclusion that that means Israel did it all. But when you actually pump the brakes and you actually talk to experts and you actually understand the sort of logic of what that means, is that usually any foreign intelligence service in any kinds of these documents that the CIA is collaborating with, whether it's Iran, whether it's Saudi Arabia or it's Israel or it's the Brits, they would redact every foreign intelligence service in those papers because it's an extremely sensitive working relationship. And so, yes, Israel and the Israeli intelligence services do show up many, many times in those documents. And yes, there are notes that say redact these, please. And now they're unredacted and we can see them. But that does not necessarily mean that Israel did the whole thing. What that means is that the CIA has had a relationship with the Israeli intelligence service. And in the context of each of those pages, when you read each of those pages, in that context, the Israeli intelligence service was involved in whatever that page was about. There have been some very spicy pages going around about Israel and Jewish money and things like that I've not personally yet seen a link to what document they are being sourced from. So I'm holding my fire on that, and I don't have the time to go through and try to source that myself. I'm hoping that now that it's all in one document, that shout out to Diligent for compiling them all. I'm hoping that we can get some more answers on that. But in general, we've got a lot of non-experts trying to give expert takes. And I think the experts are very wisely taking their time and sifting through the insane amount of data and trying to cook a little bit more before they start to release any hot takes on what's going on. Me personally, I've been watching the network of influencers. I've been watching X to learn more about the X landscape rather than watching the document specifically to try to solve the case, because there's a lot of people more educated than me that will probably have a lot more context and understanding than me.
Well, and we're in this initial phase where everybody is racing to find something that confirms
to get the click.
Whatever they have been speculating would be in there for the whole time.
Yeah,
I will say a couple of the things that I think we're going to find most interesting. And again, this is why I'm going to give a lot of credit to President Trump here, because I feel like he really forced a lot of this out. one of the things that I have seen sourced is there are tons of unredacted things about how the CIA and the government infiltrated churches and infiltrated Cuba. To me, the spycraft stuff, I think, may end up being some of the biggest story out of this. And I said beforehand, I've been telling people that the cover up to me will be as revealing as anything. There's still going to be questions: how many shooters, right? Where they came from, who actually sent them. I personally believe it's the same shadowy like cartel that includes like mob and high-level government officials and NGOs and foreign countries like Israel.
As well as LBJ, the vice president at the time. A lot of corporate executives like Clint Murchison, oil executive.
Without a doubt. Right. But I think what's going to be more interesting, and what I'm surprised is actually unredacted in these pages, is how much it's like very open about, you know, the operations to force news to inject themselves into churches and religious groups and political movements. If that's in there wholesale, this could end up being even bigger than just the JFK files. I mean, this could be a confirmation of like kind of the intelligence community playbook to overthrow grassroots political movements. And if we even get a tenth of what I believe is in like that redacted in these files, this could be bigger than even we were like our biggest hope about what the JFK files could show.
Wouldn't it be cool if in a roundabout way this led to JFK shattering the CIA into a million pieces and scattering them to the wind? Wouldn't that be just like the ultimate like I could
literally perfect. And to be honest, it may actually, to me, what I've seen that's been the most compelling to me so far is right, like the in-depth, like, okay, well, we had these people embedded in Cuba who told us this about Oswald, and right, those threads I think are going to be as fascinating as like rehashing the actual like the Zapruder film and what happened in Dallas that day. And the showing of how they covered this whole thing up in order to like narrative, to me, that's what I'm looking at from the like early things that I've seen. But again, there's so many pages of this stuff. And it's funny because I randomly will click on a few, and the one I randomly clicked on was literally about like the CIA using their contacts inside the media to help frame the narrative in favor of the Warren Commission. Like that's the stuff to me that could, I think, get incredibly juicy. The Gary Underhill stuff I think is going to be very telling. But I mean, we've got 50,000 people looking. You guys, shout out to you guys, the chat, always killing it. Shout out to producer Cheney for bringing your guys' messages like up on the screen so we can check it out. We're always watching. We appreciate you guys so much. The active community here is the bomb. And I just retweeted it. Check out the Patreon so that we don't have to do ads and we can still make sure that the team is well fed and Maha, baby. It's all the way around. But I'll conclude with this. I think most of us who regularly wear the tinfoil have long assumed that the government and foreign actors and corporations were behind the murder of JFK. I also believe, by the way, that the same group are behind the removal of Nixon. And
probably behind the shooting of Trump in a lot of ways, too.
And I think it continues.
New generation.
I think those were early days, and now it's an even like more sophisticated, nefarious, evil beast that produces things like Anthony Fauci and Bill Gates and the World Economic Forum and so much else. So I listen, I think this is a crowdsourced effort. So I encourage everybody, pick a random page. Like seriously, like I'm going to pick page 8,247, read it, summarize it, and like put it out there. Like, and that's how I really, it's up to us to make sure that we go through all of it. And if you only count on like the influencers who are putting stuff out, you're going to allow a framing of what the actual information is that is probably not ideal.
Clickbait.
Yeah, I mean,
A lot of
65,000
clickbait.
pages, if you were to print it, would be one hell of a volume. So, like, that's a lot of information. I know a lot of people are just like, kind of relying on AI too now. Like, here, let's just Grok, tell me what does this all mean?
I've seen a lot of AI summaries that totally are missing the mark on a lot of these pages. Can be useful, but I've seen at least one AI outline of the whole, like, this AI outline covers the whole thing, and then you search for like a name that shows up multiple times in the documents that you can check for yourself that the AI doesn't even mention once. So it's like, yeah, like, we're not quite there yet, boys.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, and I think
and
because
listen, it's
they're
up to us.
I was just gonna say, because they're in PDF form too, it's like it's not easily searchable and scannable. So, anyways,
Yeah.
the collective has some work to do to categorize and make this more searchable and more sleuthable. But again, we're only a couple days into this, so and it took how many years to get us to this point?
60?
60 years, and we're expecting to understand everything in 2 days. Like,
And it's worth mentioning too that, like, this document drop just so happens to fall on top of Israel reigniting their bombing campaigns and killing hundreds more civilians in Gaza. And so there's this whole war kicking off in the Middle East all over again, plus a whole bunch of dangerous World War III posturing with Iran that is now no one's talking about it all of a sudden. And everyone is just clamoring for the documents about JFK. I cannot help but suspect that timing and ask myself some questions.
Look here, look here, look here, look here, look here.
Yeah, if you want some tinfoil, that's my tinfoil. Is we already know what happened with JFK, and the documents will be nice to confirm it and to get more details and more depth. But, like, there's some real shit going on in the world right now, and JFK documents are not going to change that.
Well, and let's just say the least Maha thing ever is war.
Yeah.
Like, right? Like, can we just agree? And, like, why the fuck are we trying to pick a fight with Iran? Like, I just listen. I understand, like, keeping,
we know,
but right? Like, can we please? Like, I'm not sending my kids to die on a foreign land for something that, like, has literally no impact on our lives at all. And I'm frankly kind of sick of it even being suggested. And I pray that this is what Trump has shown over and over again, which is he saber rattles in order to bring people to the negotiating table. We famously saw this with North Korea, where his little rocket man, his little tiny micro button compared to Big Daddy Don's big button. And I promise you, little rocket man, my button's much bigger. It's much redder. Oh, it will bring destruction like you have never seen, right? He's always used that to actually drive people into negotiations and talks.
But do we really think it's going to work with Iran?
I pray so.
Yeah. I don't know. I hope it does, because he's going to do it all. He's already doing it. So I dang well hope it works. But
I mean, it fits what he has done before, and it's worked for us in a bunch of, right, like, to avoid a bunch of conflicts. And so I don't want.
How does Russia deal with Iran?
So
by being friendly with them,
right? But because they're jointly alienated, right?
Well, they're also next door neighbors too, and it's like, but it feels like Iran has, for since 9/11, been labeled part of the axis of evil, and for a much longer time, like, it went through its own, like, dastardly transformation and became, like, this evil country, and it feels like it needs its own salvation, not necessarily just a bombing like campaign. Like, bombing doesn't seem like it's going to get us anywhere.
Bombing just creates a whole new generation of terrorists. And
bombing
is the best recruitment campaign for extremists. Like,
Well, and listen, we overthrew the Shah in the 60s, right?
Yeah, we created this mess.
Right,
The
and
CIA, Allen Dulles, and Kermit
this is our
Roosevelt
product. We
created this mess.
boogeyman, and now we're like trying to stoke up like that other big wealth transfer war pot.
I mean, realistically, what you bring up there, Dustin, the overthrowing of Iran back in, I believe, the late 50s there, that was one of the CIA's greatest triumphs. Like that was for all of, I mean, till to this day, that is touted as one of the CIA's greatest covert operations. And ironically, that operation of overthrowing Iran and installing the Shah directly led to the geopolitics that has Iran in the position it's in today, as the threat that it is today to both Israel and the United States. That is the result of the greatest, one of the greatest CIA covert operations in American history. That's what you get when you go trying to play God all over the world with covert operations, guns, and bags of money.
It's funny. So I had a super secret mission to Washington, D.C. Early in the week that went phenomenally. I love when a plan comes together. I can't wait for everybody to know what's coming, but like I'm keeping it close to the vest. But I actually, right, I was around a bunch of people, like very high level people in the government, and we were discussing this. And right, to me, America First is really all about this really simple concept, which is when we go into places that aren't ours and we fund both sides and give both sides weapons, we end up with no friends. Like we have screwed the pooch so bad that it's not like, oh, well, if this guy wins, we win. Everybody hates us and are meddling, despite the fact that we have continually just sent money, treasure, and blood in order to like what? So that everybody hates us. And I really, to me, that like, I hope that Trump is playing some 3D chess here, right? Like I really, and I don't hold out that he's not, that even with the timing of these file drops, right? Like you seemed like you were a little suspicious, Ian. That was like, hey, look at the shiny object over here. I'm looking at it though. Like I said, I'm looking at it from a perspective where all of a sudden we're getting deeper information about how the CIA in that time period doing a bunch of shadowy shit with Israel and other governments in order to, subvert a bunch of stuff. And I wonder if Trump isn't actually like working to expose it, because I believe that Trump is committed to America First. I'll add one more thing, because I saw that Bibi gifted another silver pager, this time to Senator John Fetterman. How is that not a fucking threat? Like, I would like to gift you with this replica of things that we use to kill people who cross us. It's a gift, if you will.
I just wanted to be able to paint
a very modern Israel gift.
It's not a fucking gift, it's a message. And how dare you come into my country and fucking threaten, like, even Democrat, like
even Fetterman.
Like,
So, in another news, Cheney, I just shared that link too. There's now another Kennedy who's working behind the scenes towards assisting with overseeing the budgets of all the intelligence agencies. And that's Amaryllis Fox Kennedy, who is the Bobby Kennedy's daughter-in-law.
As far as I can tell.
She is brilliant. She's an incredible human. And she is now in charge of reining in the intelligence agency's black budgets. So, this is
so she was at the heart of a lot of the Bobby conspiracy theories early on, because she is ex-CIA. To everyone that has not resolved their feelings about Amaryllis, I highly recommend that you get her book and read it. It is both an incredible read, and I would be dumbfounded if for anyone to be able to read that book and then come away with it thinking that this woman is anything but genuine and a really great patriot with a really deep heart, especially as a mother now. I gained so much respect for her from reading that book and for her perspective on the intelligence agencies from an inside informed perspective that understands the need for intelligence agencies, but also understands their shortcomings in a deep way. So I couldn't think of a better job for Amaryllis to be taking on. I'm super happy that she's doing that.
You know, and there's floated as the CIA director, but then like, you know, some people
That
like,
would have been
ain't not gonna happen.
no way they're gonna let that happen.
But you want to talk about a difficult task to take on. So one of the coolest things that's happened to me in the last couple of years is I got to do a space with Freeway Rick Ross.
Yeah, dude.
Right? Like if you're not familiar,
It's crazy.
Like the CIA was behind like the crack epidemic, right? And recruited this guy, Freeway Rick Ross, who, weirdly enough, there's a popular celebrity with the same name to, you know, like to muddy the water. It's weird how often that seems to happen, right? But he laid out like specifically and did prison time for dealing crack on behalf of the CIA. I mean, we have this, like, if you guys follow the Matt Gaetz like controversy, right? So Congressman Matt Gaetz, it was like, oh my God, he's a pedo and was like doing the I think a sneaking arrangement with women. It turns out like behind all of that was this intelligence community group that have like needed funding to try to go rescue some dude in Iran. And they were like, well, we'll just extort Matt Gaetz's dad in order to get the money. This actually happened, like came out recently. And that's what I'm getting at, like with my hope for the JFK files, by the way, which is like them extorting to get black budget in order to do these operations. Like this is like the idea that it's taxpayer money anymore. They've literally just like, they will run extortion rackets on American citizens and members of Congress in order to get funding to do like whatever little thing they do because they don't think it'll get approved by anybody in the government. It's freaking insane.
Well, boys, is our guest here? Should we talk about our Patreon and then introduce our guest?
Yeah, I think it's Tiffany here. We got her Cheney. We got her in the background. Somebody let me know.
I'm stoked for Tiffany to come on. Tiffany is an absolute gangster. I found her super early on in her struggle against private equity. She was just a mom trying to run a kids like a kids gym mostly for kids that have disabilities or learning disabilities. She's done incredible work with children. And then suddenly her company that owned the gym she was working at got bought out by private equity. And then they started to do really horrible things to people. And she pushed back and spoke up on behalf of her kids and her families. And they tried to make an example out of her to great ends, like multi-million-dollar lawsuits, like atrocious attacks on her person and her family, and just everything under the book that you could and could not believe. And she has still been fighting. And it looks like she's almost done and she's almost won, but fingers crossed. And then just last week, she was digging into the information about private equity and the information about the stock market and the bubble. And she stumbled across this little detail that everyone has not been talking about that just like opened up this whole can of worms for her. And she just went on this like incredible deep dive that took the internet by storm last week. That is very much, as far as I can tell, the next 2008 bubble and where they're hiding it and how it's going to play out and what's going to happen. So before we welcome Tiffany on, we should probably tell the guests one more time about where they can find our Patreon and how they can support the Club Maha podcast.
Yeah. So Kai, you want to take that?
Well, sure. I mean, we just we have made the decision to lean away from like sponsoring and highlighting individual kind of products and companies towards the spirit of independence. So, one of those methods is through Patreon. So patreon.com/Club Maha. If you head there for $5, if you want to contribute more, you can. $5 a month, you can support this. We've got 66,000 viewers right now on this. Behind the scenes, we got 4 people who are operating, who are assisting with it. We've got a family coming together. We are dedicated towards bringing this mission to you. And for $5 for the cup, for less than the price of a fancy coffee from Starbucks, you can support independent media and truth seekers like ourselves to be doing this week in, week out. We want to plant ourselves strongly, or we have planted. This is 11 weeks in a row that we've done this, and we look forward to week 12 and 13 and continuing continuing this mission. But we could definitely use your support.
And to build out the mission, to be able to take political action, to be able to provide resources, and to be clear, to still promote dope brands, just not as a paid relationship. We still want to help out dope ass companies and highlight, like, for example, Graham came on from Tallow Grill last week, and it was awesome. That was such a good conversation. We just want those relationships to be free of money. Yeah, by the way, that was not paid. Yeah, that was not a paid spot when Graham came on. He's just a homie, and we wanted to highlight what he was doing. And that's the kind of relationship we want to have with these brands, is we want to be an enlightening and empowering force to uplift high quality companies, because that's what America's made of, is companies and brands. And we want the best ones to represent our country.
I also, right, the thing I'll add, we also don't want to muddy the water for you guys, which is leave you guessing whether or not, like, oh, are they getting paid? We literally want to highlight and focus like everybody who's doing the important Maha work, especially like in these early phases where things are happening. So if you could throw $5 a month at the Patreon, again, we've got producer Cheney and Augustus and Damo and the crew behind the scenes, Billy Zira. Like, we have an incredible team behind us, and we want to make sure that they're covered. So hook it up. And I'm really excited. So I'll as we bring Tiffany on. So when I was doing the tea party, it's Dustin's story time. It'll be a quick one though. But I actually became so concerned with pension funds that I commissioned an independent stress test of the 50 largest municipal pension funds in the country to see like how much the stock market would have to go down in order for them not to be able to meet their current obligation. This sounds like nerdy. My brain works sometimes, right? I want to say I spent like $250,000 of my own money to do this.
What?
Yeah, no, I'm not even joking. And it got almost zero attention, unfortunately. Like, right? It wasn't. I should have just been like, "Oh, pitch a bed," blah, 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 right? It wasn't like a hot enough topic. But the pension funds capture by the Wall Street gamblers has long been a threat that I don't think people are ready for. And right, so the whole reason I'm in politics is that I discovered that there used to be this thing called Glass-Steagall, that investment banks and depositor banks both say bank, but they're distinctly different things. One is like a bunch of degenerate fucks who borrow $100 and go gamble for every dollar, right? And one is like where we all put our money in order for it to be safe. And those were divided from the 1920s until the 1990s when Bill Clinton signed a bill to repeal Glass-Steagall. And weirdly enough, the bubbles came back. And the reason it's problematic is that Wall Street cannot be allowed to hold us hostage when their gambles fail, right? And so the concept of like, okay, you don't get to take the money that I have in my checking and savings account, borrow $100 for every dollar that's in there, and then like walk into the Vegas, like bet on, you know, bet it on red, if you will, right? Or the equivalent, right? You can't go bet it on Bitcoin or Ethereum or Dustin's latest shitcoin. Like, no, right? You don't get to go gamble my money that way. Seems really simple, right? And then like as my process of like trying to reestablish that became a big thing to me, where I landed was something that's really right. The reason I commissioned that particular study is I think that problem is 100-fold with pension funds.
Yep.
Right. So like all of the money that goes into your retirement, if you're a government employee or state or city, right? All of that money is given to somebody to try to make more money in order to make it solvent. And as a result, they have dramatically overpromised people based on like how much they pay in, how long they can take it out. And then as we are successful with Maha and people's life expectancies get longer and longer, right? The stress that's going to continue to put on these pension funds encourages them into riskier and riskier gambles in order to make up the difference. And that's So
And
that's
it's so much worse than you just described. Tiffany's about to break this thing wide open. It is worse than betting on red. It's literally betting on the entire casino burning down. Tiffany, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
welcome, Tiffany.
It's been a busy week.
Yeah, it has. It has.
It's been a very busy week. I brought the right water bottle.
Let's go. Yeah, you just happened to be here in Austin near to me when you figured this bombshell out. And we fortunately had time to grab lunch and go over this in person and hash out some of this right as you were figuring it out. What was it that initially got you started on this train of thought? Can you start at the beginning for us of what we're talking about here?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, the last time I was on this show, I talked about Girl Scout cookies and the Girl Scout pension. Do you remember?
Yep.
And I started following my Girl Scout trail because I was working on my Girl Scout cookie deep dive. And I was looking at where their investments were, because one of the things that's breaking the back of the Girl Scout pension is that they had done a long investment in private equity. And when the fund closed out, it came out 35 million short of what was expected. And so on their books, it had looked like it was 35 million more short up than it was for 10 years. And I was looking at like, that started me, and I was kind of just going in that direction. But I have like a board that looks like that crazy guy in front of all the red strings with like the serial killer like breakdown, right? I have a bunch of those for private equity. And one of the things I was really struggling with was that we've seen this exponential bankrupting of private equity owned companies. Now, historically, you were 10 times as likely to file for bankruptcy once acquired by by private equity the first time. Once you flip to a second private equity firm on the secondaries market, you are now 23 times as likely to file for bankruptcy. Historically, that has been the case for at least 20 years. Okay?
It's not a good metric.
Not a great metric at all. But over the last 3 years, their highest number ever, excluding the anomaly that was COVID, had doubled and then doubled again. And so now we've got to look at it as like 20 times as likely and 50 times as likely, basically, which is just an astronomical increase. And I was trying to figure out what changed, because they were still being just as greedy. The secondaries market made me think maybe that was part of it, that they weren't having like accurate evaluations. Yep, that's me right now. But Joann's was this place where I was really stuck, was Joann's in Party City. Okay, and that's because, people online have had a really fun time trying to talk about my video is not plausible, because they say that you can buy all that stuff online. Let me tell you, I own Joann's. That's I own everything in that store. And there is not a fabric crafter alive that wants to buy fabric online without touching it. Not one. We don't do that. Okay. We want to touch what we're going to work with, and then we sew. Joann's is like the largest fabric retailer in the United States. So I was waiting and I'm watching. After COVID, Joann's came out of it stronger than almost every industry except pharmaceuticals coming out of COVID. They got 9.4 million new customers during COVID.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
Profitability skyrocketed. They had record profits every year since then. There was the Million Mask Challenge where everybody wanted to start learning. So everybody took up a hobby during COVID. So Joann's was a sticking point for me, where they'd filed 2 Chapter 11s, which means you go Chapter 11, and then it's called Chapter 22, and then Chapter 33. And so on their second Chapter 11 last year, they said they were going to restructure. And I'm like, okay, well, then they must have taken out some more debt. But they were one of like 15 companies that had filed a Chapter 11, and then 11 months later said we're closing everything. And a Chapter 11 is meant to restructure, not to close out. It gives you a lot of leeway during that 11 or 12 months to bleed the company dry, to sell off lots of assets, to enrich yourself a whole bunch, to collect double fees as a private equity firm. But they should not have gone bankrupt. Over and over again, I was like, why Joann's? It doesn't make sense. 97% of their stores are profitable. 97%. In retail numbers, that is an astronomical figure. So what changed?
Yeah, it's like the guy getting 97% in the class failing the class, right?
Correct. And there was a Financial Times paywalled article, and I paid through the paywall to get into it. And it said that it was analyzing why Joann's crumbled, even though Joann's was successful. And they talked about this back floating rate debt, and how those payments had changed significantly enough that it had been enough. And I was like, backfloating rate debt.
Yeah, never heard that before.
And I went and looked. I couldn't find a single article aside from this Financial Times article that even mentioned it. The only place I could find it was in a bunch of obscure prospectuses from JP Morgan and Charles Schwab about whether or not they recommended investing in companies that had taken on backfloating rate debt. I happen to have one friend that works for a private equity firm that's very high up. And I called him up and I was like, what is backfloating rate debt? He says, it's like an adjustable rate mortgage, but it's what we stack on top of the assets we acquire in a leveraged buyout. I said, how much of the private equity debt is floating rate debt? And he says 90%.
So let's say that one more time. Your friend in private equity said that, according to them, 90% of, I mean, give or take, even if it's 50% of private equity debt, which is trillions of dollars right now.
They have 11 trillion under management, and they have approximately 4 to 5 trillion they've taken out in the last 6 years.
An adjustable rate, meaning that when you take out the loan, you get your home loan at 2%, but then in a couple of years it could go up to 5%, it could go up to 6%, right? And that is what caused a large part of the 2008 financial collapse and potentially the collapse of the entire global financial system had we not bailed out the banks.
Well, so I want to ask one thing real quick, Tiffany.
Yeah.
Because I have a sneaky suspicion that somehow they are also packaging this debt together with a bunch, right? It's not just a Joann's, which is successful. They married that to, a bunch of dipshit companies to be like, oh, look, everything's safer. What do you want to bet?
Yeah. Yep. So that was my next question was like, first of all, when I realized the scale and the gravity of what we were talking about, we are talking about up to 25% of the market in almost every major industry in America right now. That is an astronomical number. And I want you to hold that 25% is leveraged under adjustable rate loans. Okay. Because during the 2008 housing crisis, it was less than 8% of the loans. Less than 8% of just housing. All right. And I also want you to hold that private equity also has bought up as much as 45% of all of the available inventory of homes in many major markets and is holding up to 24% of all houses that have been sold in the last 4 years. Okay. Also with backfloating rate debt. Okay. Which is helping to force up housing prices, right? Because they're raising it to keep up with that backfloating rate debt. And then you look at 2008, the total amount of inventory and assets under management there, $1.1 trillion was subprime, $1.3 trillion was not that bad, but less than optimal. And it was repackaged, right? So we're talking $2.4 trillion. This is at least $3.8 trillion. And what's killing me is like, yes, they are repackaging it. My next question was to the banks, why would they give out this debt if they know that this is going to happen? Like, why would they keep giving them this money? If we know they're more likely to bankrupt, if we know they're more we know 10 times as likely, 23 times as likely. We know that. Why?
And we're not likely to bail them out again because there's serious public pushback against bank bailouts now. So it's not a good look if they need another bailout, right?
Correct. So my next question was, well, then why would they give it to them? And the answer is that within literally 10 days of delivering on these loans, they are repackaging it and offloading it off their books and getting a ton of money in the process for it. And they're not doing it as a CDO this time, right? Instead, they're doing it as a CLO. Now, CLOs have been around for a long time. It's collateralized loan obligations, but they've never been so full of this much like adjustable rate debt that is private equity owned or like private equity driven. And private equity, as we all know, is extremely reckless with how they manage corporations. That's why they have such high, like they're strip mining. That's what they're there. They're not there to create wealth. They're not there to create like anything for anybody. They're strip mining. And the only thing they make is money and only for 1%, right? They don't give anything back. And so when I was looking at the numbers, I literally ran to Ian. I was like, Ian, I need to see you. I need you to tell me I'm crazy. Just tell me I'm wrong. Please just tell me I'm wrong.
And me coming from the GameStop world.
To tell me I'm wrong. Look at all this stuff. Tell me I'm wrong.
Nope. No, the GameStop community has been talking about this kind of stuff in many ways for a long time, because right now their eyes are big on Bed Bath & Beyond, which has been going through this exact same process. Infiltrate the company with bad management that is from this private equity world, that sells off the property, that sells off the assets of the company, that loots it for all it's worth while they go into Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and then bankrupt the company and offload all that debt into this scheme. And then where do the banks park that debt, Tiffany? What did you find next?
So historically, I have known that some of the worst private equity bundled debt was already sitting with pensions. A lot of that pension is state-funded pensions and public sector jobs like CalPERS, the California pension system, or like the Chicago Teachers Union pension, or like the Ohio Public Sector Employees Union pensions. Like, they've always bundled it and stuck it with pensions. The reason that they stick it with pensions is because pensions are very underfunded in America. People are living longer. They didn't fund them right. In the case of Girl Scouts, they were just absolutely reckless with bad leadership. Okay. It was absolute, just larceny from their existing pension members. But for educational purposes only, allegedly. But pensions constantly and chronically need to make their pensions look more financially solvent than they are. Okay. And when it comes to most types of debt, they have to update their numbers as their dividends come in with their quarterly reports. They have to update it. But with private equity, they don't do quarterly reports. They don't do dividends for their investors. They're in that fund for 10 years, no matter what. And so instead of putting their quarterly updates in their pensions books, they get to hold it for 10 years with the estimated earnings. So for 10 years, your pension looks like it is doing great. And so there's a lot of, seductiveness about making it look better, so you don't have to worry so much, and you get to kick it to the next pension manager 3 or 4 years down the road. So pensions systematically choose this debt because they're underfunded, and it makes them feel better about how their books look, and it takes the pressure off of them. Unfortunately, those chickens are going to come home to roost. And that's happening in real time.
And when they do, if the pensions need a bailout, that's going to be a whole different story. Bailing out the banks all over again. There's no way Americans will bail out the banks, but
never again.
Pensions are all going under. Americans are going to bail that shit out so fast. And the tragedy is that it's the exact same result. Everyone else has already made their buck. Everyone else has already taken their profit. And then the bailout flows out to the end result, to the end of the stream. And unwittingly, we will be tricked into bailing out the exact same evil players that did it the last time, probably.
Well, this is how the extortion works, right? And again, it gets to why Glass-Steagall has been like.
I love talking about Glass-Steagall. I love talking about how we got here because people love to pigeonhole this. This is you Republicans voted for this. You voted for this. And then there's the people like, look what Biden left.
Oh, no.
Private equity's infiltrated the stream.
Right?
Private equity in the house.
But so this is how the extortion game works. The Mitt Romney vulture capitalists, right? Like Bain Capital, come in. They strip even profitable companies down into how can we make money by just literally destroying it, right? Like through the destruction of this company, not trying to save it, right? Maybe it's got some struggles. Maybe like in the case of Joanne's, it doesn't, right? And the point is, right? Like we just rob and rob and rob. And the reason that they can do it is that the fund managers at these municipal and state pensions are often elected from the union or from the workforce. They often are not nearly as sophisticated as the Wall Street pension managers and hedge funds, right? And so they're often taken advantage of. And the advantage, like Tiffany said, is oh, you get to run the estimate. So on paper, you look golden until the bomb drops that your pension has been raided by these vulture capitalists. And what happens then? If the pension is right, and this gets to why, and I don't know if you were listening, Tiffany, but I actually commissioned a detailed study.
I did hear you say that.
on the 50 largest municipal pensions. I did it in 2014, and like they're like a stress test on whether or not they'd be able to make their current obligations, right? So like their
Not even close.
pension debt is divided into two things. You have your current obligations, which is the people who worked for you for 30 years with an agreement that their retirement, they would get X amount of dollars in the mail to be able to pay their bills and live their life like through the end of their life.
Yep.
That's current obligations. And then you have future obligations, right? Which is the expenses, both the payments and the healthcare and other benefits that go to people who are set to retire going forward. And if pensions stop making their current obligations, that means that millions of our seniors no longer get the checks that they use to stay above water. And so the sick gamble that Wall Street and these vulture capitalists are making is that they can rob Granny blind because the American government and the American people will bail them out. It
Exactly. But like I started to say this right before the technical glitch or whatever it was. It is so easy. If you look at my comment section, if you look at Ian's comment section right now under my video, people are like, "You voted for this. Congratulations. He's been here 2 months. I don't think he did this." Okay. Second of all, someone's going to say, "Look what Biden left us with." Let me tell you, Biden wasn't making any decisions. We all know that now. My problem is that it's so easy to say this is one party's fault or another. I want to be very crystal clear. First of all, private equity donates 50-50 down the middle. Depending on who's in charge of the Congress, it's 51-49, period. Okay, if you look historically going back at least 10 years, that is the case. 50-50. They own everyone. Second, every single president since Carter, starting with Carter and since Carter, has loosened the restrictions on private equity to bring us to where we are now. And every single one until Obama did it with bipartisan support in Congress.
Yep.
Okay, so the worst offenders, when Carter was president, the law was very clear. If you had more than 35 individual investors in a private equity fund, once you crossed a 36 or crossed a certain dollar amount, you had to make reports to the SEC to make sure that money was being managed fiscally responsibly. Okay, you had to report to the SEC, and we got to see what was happening. You start plugging along, and it was, now it's 50. Okay, then it's 100. George H.W. 100, right? We get to the repeal of Glass-Steagall, and they take all of the financial restrictions off, and now it's 1,000 investors. Okay, 1,000 investors, any amount of money. We no longer need to regulate you. You don't have to put anything to the SEC. Then we get to Obama. Now I want to stress, when Clinton did this, he did this with he had one house that was Republican led and one house that was Democrat led, and it passed with a 98% pass rate through both houses. Okay,
Because they're
this
all
is not a
getting rich.
one-person problem. All right, And then we plug along to Obama, and all the wheels came off. You can have an unlimited number of investors, unlimited amounts of money. I'd also like to point out that Obama went in with $6 million in value to his life and name and came out $370 million rich. Okay, that's not how you're supposed to be president. I don't know if anyone told them, but he took a ton of money from private equity and he invested a ton of money with private equity. Okay, I'm going to say that, but he took all the guardrails off. Now, I'm not going to give a lot of credit here. There is only one president since Carter, one, that has increased any restriction on private equity at all. And it was minuscule. It was not nearly enough to do anything meaningful, but only one president has. Anybody?
Was it Trump?
It was Trump term one.
That's very surprising, honestly.
Trump term one, all he did was make it like during Trump term one, they had basically gotten to a point where they were getting the carried interest loophole by flipping these properties like literally like every 12, 13 months. And it was chaos. They were literally like trading them like Pokemon cards. And he said you have to hold it for 3 years. That's the only change he made. And Biden revoked it.
I want to add a couple things because this is literally like why I got into politics in the first place. Like why I saw being a professional poker player was like, I must do something. is specifically this, which is like Wall Street has been allowed to gamble, right? At first, like the '08 collapse, it was our savings and mortgages that were backing it. And we never got anything to even address it. And what's sad is we have a proven solution, which is you firewall off the absolutely necessary financial instruments like
Yep.
savings accounts, checking accounts, or pension funds, and you fire them all off from the Wall Street gamblers. It has to be like that. And it's actually a really simple fix. And you're right about it being bipartisan. Newt Gingrich, as part of the '94 revolution, like passed the repeal of Glass-Steagall, which was signed by Bill Clinton. And this is one of those issues that everybody like always, weird, they always come together. And it's the most extreme and dangerous. And the reason that it's so like the reason that it's being pushed right now so badly is that the out of control government spending under Biden led to record inflation. And Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve, right, under one of two things that the Federal Reserve has in their charter to do, which is to manage the growth of inflation, had to raise interest rates, right? Because you raise interest rates in order to encourage people holding money and lowering inflation. And so what we have is the scenario where our government has sent our pension funds and our savings accounts and our checking accounts to Wall Street to leverage 100 or 151 to take into the casino and gamble with, or to find out maximum way to extract personal wealth while at the destruction of whatever company they may end up owning. And then on top of that, right, like spending money at a rate that forces inflation so that the interest rates that are adjustable on the back end float go up. So the payments, right, like, and a lot of people will understand this if I describe it like this, right, which is if you have a mortgage at a 2.8%, maybe that mortgage is $1,800, right? Like your monthly payment. But if you are locked in at an adjustable rate and the rates go up and now you're paying 7-8%, you might be paying $4,000 or $4,500 or $5,000 for the same payment because you're servicing your debt. And it's the same thing that's happening with these pension funds. And what's concerning is we've allowed them to vulture our companies that are even successful. And now, right, if they want to hurt Trump or hurt the economy, all they have to do is continue to like force this issue. And we're left with no choice. Like that's what scares me, Tiffany, is that like we want our seniors to be comfortable. And they entered into agreements long time ago that are commitments. And if these pension funds are not solvent, and the results of my study were that almost none of them were, and that all of these accounting shenanigans that you're talking about, right? Like the ways in which estimates are allowed to stand. And so they're able to make promises and commitments based on numbers that like growth numbers that are completely unrealistic. Like, oh, well, our pension is going to grow at 8% a year, every year, consistently, no matter what. Nobody fucking does that, right? Like, it's never how you can't show me a 10-year period anywhere in history where any big fund has been able to like generate returns that high, that consistently. And yet we've allowed them to make that the standard across the board. So how bad is it? Like, how close are we to like utter destruction?
I mean, I'm not an economist, right? I want to stress, like, what kills me in all of this is that there should have been somebody else talking. Like, no, the fact that I could find one article that has ever even mentioned private equity loans are adjustable rate is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
Now, I've had it confirmed by tons of economists, a bunch of private equity people. I've only found one video even saying I'm wrong. Normally, I have 100 videos saying I'm wrong no matter what I say. I've literally found one.
Was
But-
it Mitt Romney? It was Mitt Romney.
No. But what worries me the most is that we are watching an exponential growth in the bankruptcies of these companies, and they have acquired more and more and more of our economy. So it's not just the pensions that scare me. Like, that's what scared me initially. What scares me the most in all of this is that every time one of these companies goes bankrupt, 50,000 people lose their jobs.
Yep.
Okay. That has and then a ton of giant commercial space sits empty. And I don't know if anybody remembers in 2008 what that was like, but when all of the parking lots got empty, it wasn't good.
Yep.
We all remember those moments. And so what's stressing me out is that the CLOs scare me, right? They do. But that's not the only way they're repackaging it. There's actually 6 repackage mechanisms I've since learned. It's not just CLOs. So CLOs might be $1 trillion, right? But there's 4 repackage mechanisms they're using, and they can buy into all of them. They can even bet against the CLOs or do a synthetic CLO.
Yeah,
which
they
is
can
exactly what
rehypothecate
went
their
wrong in
CLOs
2008.
over and over and over.
Right. Again, so that's a whole problem. But what scares me the most about this bubble is that I've been saying private equity was building a bubble for years. I just couldn't convey what scares me is I believe they're using the same debt or the same assets to collateralize multiple debts. Nothing else makes sense to me. And these exponential growths in bankruptcies and the shuttering of all these stores, well, we see 110 bankruptcies last year. Okay, that's what we see. What we don't realize is that some of those bankruptcies were companies that had 15 companies in them.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrifying. The franchise group I told you about, it owned 12 companies and they had to file bankruptcy for all of them. Okay. Joann's had 968 stores, gone. Party City, 1,000 stores, gone. Right? Big Lots, 1,000, 1,500 stores, gone. So yes, we have a problem with the CLOs. Absolutely. They're not the only thing in this bubble. And the only video I found that's criticizing me is CLOs aren't enough to tank the pensions. It is not a CLO problem. That is the first video I made. It said it was going to be a multi-part series, but it is the exponential strip mining and bankrupting of a much bigger spectrum of industries and possibly housing. Yep. That is what scares me, is that I feel like this is a bubble that could pop in 8 directions. We could be leaking like a sieve right now. You know what I mean? And for me, when you look at the exponential increase in bankruptcies, are we already starting? Is it starting? Is that where we are? Because to me, that's how it seems.
Yep. And Dustin's using the metaphor of gambling, like going to the casino, which is an apt metaphor, how the banks are gambling with all of our money. They're gambling with our futures. They're gambling with our pensions. But I would argue that when you really look at it, it's not the same as gambling. Because when you gamble, you go to the casino and you sit down at a table and you play a slightly rigged game that makes the house win a little bit more often than not. This is not that. When the banks are gambling with these assets and these monies, when these private equity funds are gambling with the way that they're distributing these loans and all this, they are actually banking on the facts that they can use these instruments that take on massive risk to make them profits, but then they can pass that risk off. And so it's actually a manipulable system that has been legislated over decades to be manipulable, specifically so that people in their position don't actually have to take on the massive risk associated with the gambling. It's just straight up looting of our system. And they don't take on the associated risk that would make it into a gamble. For them, it's a sure bet. And that sure bet is worth billions and billions and billions of dollars of profit for them and all their buddies. So it's hardly even gambling. It's really looting of the economy. And they know that when they finish that loot, then there's going to be all this market share in all these different spaces where suddenly consolidation, their buddies can buy up all this extra market share in each of these different industries. And we wind up with a world where all of a sudden all these markets have, 30% less businesses serving us. And over time, we've walked ourselves closer and closer to just this one giant Amazon of corporate control where every industry is just owned by these massive players. And you only have one option on the entire grocery store aisle for all of your shampoo products and all of your baby food.
And in an extreme case, you could even have the government doing the bailout and then taking the shares as well. And now you have radical nationalization of private industry. And one of the things is private equity isn't stopping. Like Tiffany, they are continuing. They just want more and more, because the more they can get, the more they can pilfer and repackage and sell, and they make the money on the fees and the transfers. The number go up. Like, these managers are really the crux of the problem.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot. There's less than that would fit into like probably a UFC arena of the actual managers. Like, you know, there really aren't that many of these true people who are playing this game that ultimately is impacting the lives of tens of millions, of potentially hundreds of millions, if not billions of people, both, you know, worldwide.
And these people know that they're not going to go to jail. They're not even going to get a slap on the wrist. The vast majority of them are going to make off with all of their profits and live incredibly rich lives and go on to do even bigger deals and even bigger scams, because they've seen that in the past no one gets prosecuted and no one gets punished. And they might find one or
no
two.
one paid for it. We held no one accountable. Zero people were held accountable in 08.
Yeah,
And
that really is the problem.
There are solutions, right? So like I'll just like, no one hates the banks enough. I'll just start with that right now. Right. So again, like, to go back to what Tiffany's laying out here with these adjustable rates, right? So like the interest that you have to pay in order to service the debt, right, being adjustable. And as inflation goes up, the Fed increases rates in order to try to curb that inflation, which means that like something that you were paying goes up exponentially. Well, here's the thing about that money. We give these banks, and include, right, because banks are no longer divided, we give them access to what's called the Fed discount window. So they often borrow this money that was then borrowed out to these companies through these pension managers, like to these to private equity and hedge funds. They're often borrowing that money from the government at 0% or even negative interest rates, right? And then repackaging it at these high adjustable rates. And so it's not even like that, like, you're right, the gambling analogy isn't quite accurate, because it's really like the Joe Pesci thing, which is right, Goodfellas, where it's like, if I win, I collect, and if I lose, fuck you.
Yup.
And right, like go cry to the government about it and like have them fix it or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's happening at a scale. One of the comments that popped across the screen that I really like: how do we GameStop Joanne's?
For real.
Right?
It's too late.
Yeah.
Well, the infrastructure is still fucking there, right? And the demand is still there. It's still a profitable
so the stores are all closing at the end of the month.
Have they already been bankrupted? Like, have they already gone
done.
off the public markets?
So they filed the 11 like 10 months ago.
Yep.
They were just supposed to restructure. They were going to restructure their debt. And then they announced, like, my guess is, as the adjustable rates kept going up, they just announced that they've closed all stores. The stores are already at 50% off. If you buy it on the stock market, it's worthless. There's no reason, because it's already been shorted.
Yeah, you have to catch it before it happens. You have to catch it while the short interest bubble is large, but before the company's fully gone. Like,
Michaels will be next. They're leveraged to the hilt from their private equity acquisition and re-IPO. Private equity still owns up. Like, honestly, like, one of the things that's frustrated me the most when I've been talking about Joanne's in video after video for the last year. And one of the things that really bothers me is people making it really political when I say, if this is the game of Monopoly, we all need to pray that Hobby Lobby wins. And the reason we have to pray that Hobby Lobby wins is because we started off with about 15 really good craft brands in the United States. And they've been getting gobbled up by private equity one after another. It's been very cannibalistic. And private equity has literally stripped them all out. And all that is left at this point was Joanne's, Michaels, and Hobby Lobby. That's what was left. AC Moore was gone. Dick Blick was gone. Hancock Fabrics was gone. There's a whole slew of them that were gobbled up in the last 5 years, 6 years by private equity. And in these last 3, we were down to Michaels, Joanne's, Hobby Lobby. Michaels has been bought and taken like private and then taken back to IPO by private equity twice, just like Joanne's. Okay, they are also leveraged to the hilt. They don't sell fabric, so now there is no fabric retailer left in the United States except for like small one-offs like Mod Fabric in New York and LA, which is a huge problem. But it's also a way they're denying us the ability to be self-sufficient, because suddenly now we can't make our own clothes. We have to buy our own clothes, right? Like, in my opinion, many ways this is targeted because there are now no fabric retailers in the United States.
Well, and we haven't had the discussion, right, about Maha and clothing and all of the issues, right, with the synthetic fabrics and other bullshit
Yep.
that goes into our clothing, which is another rabbit hole I fell down. I'm like, no, I'm like, now I have to like source where my clothes
Absolutely.
come from. Like, what the fuck?
But
But
like, what stresses me about this is that if you look at this, we need to all be hoping that Hobby Lobby wins. That if there's a game of Monopoly, Michael's falls next, and Hobby Lobby is what's left. And they won't have done it the wrong way. That's why they won't get trust busted, because they aren't the ones. They haven't acquired any of these businesses. They've kept their hands out of it. They've let everything else cannibalize each other, and they've just gained market share without having to be opportunistic, without having to engage in antitrust behavior. All right. And that's because they have one rule. They're very, very committed to their Christian roots. And they believe the part of the Bible that says, you shall not carry debt, you shall owe no man. And so they have a rule that they do not take on any debt they cannot pay back with cash within 1 quarter.
Funny how that works.
And that is how they have achieved 35% market share. Now it will be like 60.
well,
and so if this is a game of Monopoly, we need to pray that Hobby Lobby wins, and that becomes the new example.
I'm game with that, but I also
We lost Dustin for a second.
Yeah,
Lost
Dustin,
Dustin.
you're frozen.
I mean, it also there just seems like a real issue too. That if you work as consumers, if we're supporting these companies that we like, pouring profits into them, and then ultimately, like it's like even the employees might be owning shareholders in these companies too. They're ultimately going to be destroyed by this vicious game that's taking place in the background. Like it's dastardly. Fuck these guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
When Bobby found me, right? He found me talking about private equity on the cover of the New York Times. And he came to me and he said, "What can we do to stop private equity?" Tiffany, I don't know, but we need to. I know that. I know we need to. I don't know how to do it. Can you give me some ideas? And I drafted up a whole policy position, a white paper, and I helped. He adopted in his campaign more than 60% of the recommendations I made, which I was incredibly humbled by. But like when you look at where we're at, I'm heartbroken every day by somebody new that sold out to private equity. And like I said, there have not been a lot of videos counteracting my videos unless they're like equity finance bros that are like, still buy private equity, right? One video that kind of stuck with me was he says, private equity is the foundation of all capitalism, and it's the foundation of our economy. Private equity is where businesses start and where they end. He said that, and I really thought about that. I took that to heart. I don't know anybody that can go and get private money to start a business as a startup today, unless you've got some nepotistic opportunity and your dad's giving you that private equity. Startup businesses don't get private equity to start their businesses. He was like, private equity is you, me, anybody. It's a loan from the bank. That's private equity. It's not public equity. And I'm like, don't conflate the two, because just because it is private, like what was private equity money, does not mean it's the private equity of today. And that's being conflated a lot in these videos that are supposedly like undermining the premise here. Private equity is borrowing from your aunt, borrowing from your grandma, but private equity, as we're discussing it, is succubus leeches that are strip mining and bleeding like vampires, the lifeblood of the economy and middle class of America.
It's the ownership class. Most of these funds are financed by billionaires and 100 millionaires.
You have to have 100
families that have
million
been
to
on
buy
top
it.
for generations.
Yes.
I will say though, this is literally like the whole reason I've been in politics my whole life.
Yep.
It's
It's hopefully the reason why more will get into politics, because I think ultimately the solution is to get a more educated population, right?
Yeah.
We
Well,
can get the citizenry educated to stand up more and to get more involved. Don't you think that that's one of the best ways long term to make change?
Well, sadly, right, what we learned with the Tea Party is that right,
Yep.
like the coming pain will drive people to ask what the fuck happened, and we'll have to be there to step in and be prepared to try to answer those questions. But we will face all kinds of subversion and like infiltrate, like all kinds of bad stuff, because they're used to these things happening. But I believe and have worked on the reason. You guys know why I crowdfunded the largest public works project in history by building a $25 million wall.
Why did you do it, Dustin?
No, because I actually believe that the solution is crowdfunding and crowdsourcing, which is like us coming, right? We have to extract ourselves from this evil system. And so like what I was saying, and when I got cut off, oddly enough, right, with Joanne's, why don't we build, like, let's pick a city where there's this open retail space and build a template and figure out how much, like, at the absolute cheapest it could be, that we could make a fabric store from scratch, with the idea that it's a template that we could spread to other cities. Like, my guess is it won't be that much. It
Do
won't
you know
be that
what's unique
much.
about my fabric wall? Do you guys want to know what's special about my Maha fabric wall?
Lay it on
What?
us.
Every single piece up there is from I don't collect just regular fabric. The fabric I work with is all artist panels. They're custom limited run American artists. Every single one of those reams of fabric is an American artist that made a limited run of their artwork and turned it into
Let's
fabric.
go.
I have thousands of yards. And every
That
one
is a
of them
Maha
is an
fabric
American
wall.
artist I gave my money to in person with my cash, and I got their custom artwork and put it on my wall to turn into my art for someone else.
That's cool.
There
That's
is
what's
a way to lift up 1 million small businesses with one community-focused business.
I
mean,
I think we could do
Even
it.
I have some big ideas about this if I can get him to get some time again.
And listen, I'll tell you this. I've been going around talking. This could be the opportunity for us, which is, their hope is that in this ensuing chaos, that we will be forced into the hands of just Amazon and the big megacorps, right?
Yep.
And we
We're gonna go
need,
straight
as
Wally.
to me as Maha, we need to continue to fight to provide other options with unique ways to fund those options, right? That aren't reliant on the same evil cast of characters that, like, sank the system in the first place. And so Tiffany, thank you so much for, like, doing the Lord's work on this in particular and bringing it to light. And I pray that we'll find a way. But, like, again, think about it, 97% profitability. Like, right, the Mitt Romney vultures come in and strip it down to make an extra buck in the short term, right? There's still a profitable business there. And and we're gonna have tons, right? All of those employees. The thing I hate about retail bankruptcies is those are really good, like, low skill entry jobs that
Yeah.
people can work their way up in. It's right, like, it's great for mothers because you can be a cashier part-time, right? It's great for people who didn't necessarily, like, go for government academic indoctrination for
It's good for work
years.
training programs for special needs adults.
Yep.
100%. And we need to not be willing to just let them go away and figure out. And it's one of the things I've always believed with the GameStop, like, revolution, is that, like, no, you don't get to, like, play your fucking stupid financial games and destroy something that, like, we actually use. And I think we're about to, like, face that in a big way. And I hope we can scale fast enough. But, that's going to be the battle. But it is the ultimate tinfoil show. And we did throw some things that I feel like we got to put, like, we got to at least mention before we cut out. We can't just
Before we jump to that, just in closing the loop on this one as well, like, I do believe there are, like, as Justin was saying, there are some great solutions out here. I would like to put the invitation out to Mike Seaford and Public Square, who have been trying to create, like, an America First like network of small businesses in America, because, like, the resilience is moving away. Like, one of the products of the mega corporatization has been these mega corporates, including stores like Joann's at 1,000, enormous big box retail all across America. It wasn't really kind of the design, but that's kind of where we got to, and it was fueled by a lot of this private equity. But there is still, like, the spirit of entrepreneurialism, along with technology and connected communication and innovation. We should be able to have the best damn access to textiles we've ever seen, where you can go and touch them and find them and connect with them. So, whenever, one of the great things about the market is whenever there are obstacles or gaps created, humanity finds a way. And so, out of this force will come a negative reaction. There will be a solution. Just like COVID, they tried to push us into into oblivion. But guess what? We're gonna with the bounce back and the freedom response is gonna be stronger than ever. And now, it really feels like we're entering a new period, both in America, but also as a civilization. So,
well, it's kind of like the Maha podcast trying to move away from the advertising model and to the support through Patreon model. You like what I did there? Go support us on Patreon.
Yeah, I mean, it's like how was the Statue of Liberty was crowdfunded by the French by selling little miniature statues of liberty. So there's a long history in that, and as we come together and work together, we don't need the big support. But that said, this is the tinfoil hat. Man, this one caught me earlier today. I was like, Jesus, are you kidding me? How fucking stupid are we collectively?
Let's close out on some tinfoil.
Yeah, let's put some tinfoil on the rescue of the astronauts from the space station. Here's the glorious landing. What do we think?
I mean, it's framed pretty wide.
Oh yeah, look at that.
I love that there was a pod of dolphins that just
and splashdown. Crew 9 back on Earth.
Did you see there's a pod of dolphins right here?
Just wait.
That gets to okay. I am not a sane person when it comes to my conspiracies about the ocean.
Copy splashdown. We see main chutes cut. Nick,
yeah, I don't know what to say about it. At this point, I can't tell the difference between AI and real videos.
Same.
It looks like Star Wars.
It's not enough chemtrails.
Yeah, and I don't trust anything that comes from NASA or outer space at this point on video format.
I mean that, but just like that, just even the audio there, splashdown Q9, and then someone clicked the garage band play oh my god.
Yup.
Crowd excitement. Woo! The very, very
so Dustin, what's the scoop on Antarctica?
All right, so if you guys haven't seen,
do you know what, wait. Do you know what my problem was with the rescue? I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it out loud because I didn't have a tinfoil hat on it until yesterday. They got off the thing and they walked. Do you know how much muscle atrophy you suffer after 9 months in space without the proper equipment to exercise?
That's a good point.
They got out and walked.
Cheney, can you pull up the picture of the astronaut too? And the outfit.
Walked out of that craft.
The space
outfit. I'm like, why can you walk?
Now, how do they walk?
Originally, when our astronauts went up, they would come off and they were super weak, and they were like, they had to get used to walking. They've been up there almost a year. Why can they walk?
And they didn't plan to be up there for a year.
Have you seen the video of the Russian cosmonauts being like, the whole fucking US thing is fake because even a little time in space and you are fucking wrecked. They come out looking fresh and clean, ready to run a fucking marathon. I'm gonna be honest, I had no tinfoil hat on this. I was like, bring them home. Bring them home. I was mad at Biden. And then they got out of the ship and they walked, and I'm like, I had a broken leg for 4 weeks and I couldn't walk when that thing came off. What the happened?
The world is a stage, folks.
I'm just gonna say that because it really is bothering me. I'm not trying to be tinfoily, but I did have that, and it really is bothering me.
Now, dolphins just happened to be right in that spot, right? They just knew that the return was coming right there. No, I mean, listen, I will tell you, I am so far. By the way, why does it always look like she's upside down? There's blood rushing to her head. I'm just saying, oh, cool, look, the hair's all up and crazy and stuff. So space is fake and gay, right? God, listen, if you're a Christian, God parted the waters and installed a firmament. I'm just saying. So don't blame me that you hate Jesus and God and the Bible because you don't believe that there's a firmament and we're actually running around in space. I'm just saying. But that's not at all, right? So we also have Antarctica. And if you guys haven't heard, I heard
there's a guy that's sexually harassing.
Well,
and
we
attacking
Do
people.
we have a
in
do we have a
Antarctica.
global pedophile ring in Antarctica now?
wait. So right,
There's a guy
Antarctica,
there.
very
Rest in
very
peace.
hard to get actually go because of the Antarctic
Yeah, they're
Treaty, which
frozen now because it's winter.
for some weird reason, every country in the world has agreed that we're going to leave Antarctica alone and no one gets to really go check it out, which
Not
is
suspicious at all.
And if you haven't gone through the legend of Admiral Byrd, super
Whoa.
necessary. But there is a group that was sent up there, and they are now frozen in. There's no getting them, and we started to get SOS messages that one of them has gone batshit crazy and is raping people and going nuts, and there's nothing they can really do.
That's
Well,
why
there
we have the
is.
Second
They just
Amendment.
decided not to. They do have a way. There is a medical evacuation team they could send. They are choosing not to.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, and
Interesting.
if you've ever been in my conspiracy spaces, you know that all conspiracy spaces either lead to a discussion about consciousness, and B, religion, or 3, Antarctica. All
Can
conspiracies,
confirm have been there.
all conspiracy roads lead to Antarctica in a way that's
So are you
absolutely
suggesting, Dustin, that what's happening right now is they're gearing us up in case they need to go make a big scene in Antarctica and they need a reason to be there?
yes.
Did I just guess that right? 'Cause I just made that up.
I will also say when Elon says
Did I
that
guess right?
he wants
You
us
heard
to
it
go
here
to
first,
Mars,
folks.
that's not a planet somewhere else. That's somewhere beyond the extended map. If you go, seriously, if you go look,
It's in the bonus package.
yeah, if you go look at the old extended maps, beyond the ice wall, one of the areas is Mars.
Mars.
Throwing it out there. Go look at the UN map of the world.
Clip this for 3 years
There are
from
a
now.
lot of things on the UN map of the world that are not in our understanding of what's in our world.
Just saying.
And and then we have another one, and I haven't seen anybody who's even close to being right on this. So we got they used some of the sonic radar stuff,
Talking about the pyramids.
like-
now.
Oh, the
Super light.
pyramids. I've been reading that constantly all day.
So
We have
the
900 feet of concrete under the pyramids in perfect columns with staircases wrapped around them.
no, don't fall for the
300
psyop, Tiffany.
meters.
Okay, so here's what the underground radar has exposed. There are that go hundreds of yards or meters, down
Yeah.
into the earth. There are perfectly aligned,
Perfect.
spherical, cylindrical,
round.
structures. We don't know exactly what they are.
Yes.
And wrapped around them are coils that people are saying oh, maybe it's a walkway, maybe it's a stairway.
Maybe it's a staircase.
No, okay,
That's
listen.
energy. That's an energy system.
That's an energy
Yes,
system.
it's
The
a
pyramid's gigantic battery.
Ian Carroll on top of it. It's seriously, it's a battery. And then so you have the spherical columns that there's I want to say 16 of them or
Do they?
20.
They
No,
don't know
there's
for
12.
sure that it's
It's,
concrete.
there's
do
Well,
they?
those are 8.
It
Is
could
it
be
8?
stone, right?
They
Not
don't know it's
concrete?
concrete. No, there's no
No, they
confirmation
just
of
no,
concrete.
they
There's
said
just
something about
the
there was a bunch of
structures.
red granite though.
I
Yeah,
bet
we
it's granite because
And the
granite is
towers
a
on top
highly
are red granite.
And then underneath, right, there are box structures. We don't know exactly what they
Yeah.
are. Right,
arcs.
but there are box structures with these
Arcs.
4 big columns coming out with wraps around them. If you want to go down the rabbit hole, look at Tartaria
Let's
and
go.
energy producing architecture. Energy producing architecture is one of the coolest fucking rabbit holes of all time. And ties to Nikola Tesla, right? And Tesla's discovery in Colorado, where he said, I can now move unlimited energy through the earth at will. And
Oh,
if you look at Tesla coils and then you compare that to all of these ancient structures that have spherical cylindrical columns with wraps of metal around, you start to think about where'd all their energy come from? In the pyramids, there's no lighting anything that's
No,
ever
those things are giant power structures.
100% power structures. I even go way crazier. I actually believe that they are the anchors through multiple dimensions that happen
Now
on
we're
the same like level structure, that the pyramids, right, are the power sources that also anchor all of the different realities that we have going on, like the megaplex, all at the same time.
Let's
But I
go.
could go on this stuff like all night. Like it's
go,
seriously
dude.
like my favorite.
We got to
thing.
launch the secondary podcast for the tinfoil podcast, baby, dude. That's gonna be
That
so
has to be
good.
trademarked already. Somebody has that.
I mean, Tripoli's got the tinfoil hat, but we could do the tinfoil and the microwave podcast any day of the week.
It seriously though, like energy and the all of this like Maha stuff, like all of the poison in our foods, they use us to consume the waste products of refining petroleum, right? Like so much of the poison that we're talking about, like getting out of food, is like some weird random like leftover waste from like some piece of refining petroleum. And if we were allowed to have free unlimited energy, all of that waste and poisons and so much else would no longer be necessary. I think it's the core of just about freaking everything. And I think it's the centerpiece. We could also, right, like ties to the world fairs, and why all of a sudden like people are like, why, what is a baby? Like, why did they have to explain to people at the world fairs where did the world fairs go? Oh my God. We have to do a full segment on this.
I like to talk about the world fairs too. That really like freaks me out. Yeah, I agree. That's an important episode.
People are requesting you hold a space after this, Dustin.
Should I do it? All right, I won't promise that I'll go for too long, but we could do a quick conspiracy space after we wrap.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I think like it would be nice to feed into that, and I feel like we've covered an awful lot this evening.
Yes, sir.
So I've got to let everyone know my private equity heartbreak of the week because everyone needs to know. Are you guys ready?
Lay it on
us.
Duke's Mayonnaise sold to private equity 3 days ago.
Oh, dude, one of the last family-owned mayonnaise brands.
And the like staple for every chef on the East Coast. Like if it's not Duke's, you're not cooking with it.
Yep.
Like I came up through, fine dining, and like it's Duke's or it's nothing. And that's because they use like regional ingredients, and like they're very dedicated to like regional farms. And like so that's my private equity heartbreak of the week. I'm here to share it with you. Nobody else has heard that from me yet.
Pro tip: mayonnaise is really easy to make too, but it's hard to perfect.
Not the point. We were supporting a family-owned brand for generations.
I understand, but we don't need. We can also create
your own family-owned mayonnaise now. Up to you, folks.
Make
it's
American mayonnaise
healthy again.
All right, who's got mayonnaise?
Make your own chickens. Make your own mayonnaise.
Make mayonnaise healthy.
Harder to grow your own paprika, which is the thing that makes Duke's.
Oh man, the mayonnaise is so bad in the stores. It's just garbage. Like, literally, like there's only one brand that my wife gets. It's $10 a little jar. Bah.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's all garbage.
Now we all have to give up Duke's.
Yep.
Well,
all right,
Tiffany,
Justin, you want to take us out of this thing?
Yeah, I'm game. Listen, thank you guys. Tiffany, amazing as always.
And on behalf of my 2,700 TikTok live viewers, thank you guys for having us in.
Where can people follow you? How do people keep up with your research?
So on X, I am the Vino Mom. And on TikTok, on X and on Instagram, which I never post there because I'm mad that they're lobbying to get rid of TikTok. I don't agree with censorship. But I'm the Vino Mom. And on YouTube and on TikTok, I am Tiffany Cianci.
Awesome. Now, everybody follow Tiffany. We'll continue to follow all the coverage closely and do everything we can to help. And let's continue to make America healthy again by finding solutions and being unafraid to look at the realities of Antarctica and Tartaria and everything else. It's been an incredible show. Seriously, you guys, thank you. I love that we delve in. And I also appreciate the take on the JFK files, right? Everybody just take your time, be patient, and like don't jump to like confirmation bias.
And
Whenever you start
recognize
going in.
that people were able to get rid of a lot of stuff before any of us are ever going to get to it anyway.
Yeah, and shout out to the patrons who signed up tonight too. Be giving you all a shout out in next week. And thank you, bless y'all. And Dustin Stockton on Twitter will be spinning up a space. Let's keep the good times rolling. 2 hours, 4 minutes, near 100,000 people in. Thank you all. Love to everybody. Let's go. Let's grow.
The sun on the field, the feeling I feel when I'm living my life for what's real. Make America healthy, feeling like it's time for a change. We're going back to common sense, making America healthy again. We're going back to common sense, making America healthy again. We're going back up healthy again.